Greetings, magical mavens. This year, spring has been a little bit of an up and down ride, both in terms of weather as well as in other areas of life. Along with processing some of my personal challenges in life, I also ended up losing a close family member. Things have been pretty intense, but amidst everything that's going on, I have managed to stay committed to my self-care and have been leaning into the things that help me feel stable and supported, even through difficult times. Which, as you may know, includes things like crafting and finding beauty in nature and in the small wonders of life. So in this video, I invite you to come along with me for some magical springtime craft projects and adventures in decorating from April and May. I'll be revamping an old pentacle wind chime I made for my first Beltane way back in 2015 to spruce it up and transform it into a lively looking wreath. It was also time to change over my dining room tablescape into something more springy and inspiring. I also decided to try something totally out of the ordinary for me and tried my hand at some sculpture for the first time in over a decade. And in the spirit of getting extra artsy, I also decided to do some painting on my watering can. All of these projects, some more so than others, serve as their own little blessing spells for peace, prosperity, and fulfillment, and it's my hope that they bring a little magic and inspiration into your life this spring as well. So I invite you to brew yourself a cup of your favorite springtime tea, maybe even some iced tea since the weather has warmed up in my area at least by the time I'm posting this, and join me for this magical spring craft video. Let's make some magic. Once upon a time, when I first discovered the magic of the Wheel of the Year, I celebrated each Sabbath with a magical crafting project. For May's Eve, the halfway mark between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, also known popularly as Beltane, I drew inspiration from the tradition of decorating with branches and ribbons. But rather than making a maypole, which wouldn't have been particularly practical for me at the time, I decided to create this handmade pentacle wind chime instead, using a combination of natural and upcycled materials. I hung it outside in my old garden, and I brought it with me to hang on my apartment patios over the years as I moved homes. It served as a very simple way to honor the springtime each year, even during phases of my life when I didn't feel I had the time to do much else besides just hanging it up. But over time, the ribbons and flowers began to fade in the sunlight, and it became dusty, worn, and full of cobwebs. A lot of the ribbons and coins fell off of it eventually, and so for the past couple of years, it's honestly just been hanging on the back of a doorknob in my art studio, waiting to be cleaned up and redesigned. So this year, I finally did it. But since I've discovered that I would prefer wind chimes that make more of a crisp sound than these ribbons, washers, and coins would be able to do, I decided to let go of the wind chime idea for this project and instead transform it into a spring wreath. After several more years of observing nature and gaining a better understanding of which kinds of plants are naturally blooming at different times of the year, I was now able to select fake flowers and foliage that at least more closely resemble the real blossoms of springtime. I combined these with some natural dried foliage I've gathered from nature to give the whole wreath a more realistic feel. I've also noticed that moss tends to be one of the first signs of green growing life in the early spring where I live, so I decided to use some Spanish moss to fill in the gaps around my bundles of blossoms. I loved so much how this springtime pentacle wreath turned out that I decided I would love to make more similar types of items for Hestia's Hearth Home Shop, my new second Etsy shop, which I just launched in December. So after finishing this wreath, I went foraging for twigs and headed to the store to find more fake flowers and foliage. I didn't get footage of that because it was crowded and I was in a hurry and it was kind of a mundane experience, but while I was out, I also popped into my local witchy shop, Rising Goddess, to pick up some herbs that I had recently learned were good for someone with my astrological placements, and I thought it would be fun to take you along for this magical little detour. But when Hestia's Hearth Shop first opened, I began by listing curated collections of antiques, like the ones I decorate my witchy aesthetic home with. But I promised my newsletter subscribers that I would soon also be adding more handmade items as well. Well, since the energy of this year has been so unpredictable so far, Hestia's Hearth has mainly just continued to be a resource for super enchanting vintage ritual tools and altar props. So to get the energy moving with the intention of adding more handmade items, I gave myself a little bit of a witch slap, fire element style. As you know, in the elemental system that we witches tend to work with, fire is the element that is about change, transformation, and speeding things up and taking action to get things done. So I lit a fire under my ass by writing the launch of my handmade wreaths into a script of an upcoming YouTube video. As you returning viewers may know, some of the most popular videos on my channel are my series on how to experience more fulfillment during each of the 8 seasons of the Witch's calendar. And in order to reach new viewers each season, I have to film and edit those well in advance so that folks new to the path who are searching for how to celebrate the summer solstice, for example, have a chance to find it and get started implementing the ideas before the Sabbath arrives. So for the summer solstice / Litha / midsummer video that's about to premiere, I mentioned wreath making as a summer bucket list item. And I also announced that I would have a selection of handmade wreaths available for those of my viewers who don't necessarily want to make their own. So essentially, come hell or high water, I have to have some wreaths in my shop by the time that video comes out at the beginning of June. Which, as I'm narrating this voiceover, I'm realizing That's in less than a week from today. It may have even come out already by the time you're watching this, so I guess I know what I'm going to be doing as soon as this video is done. I do have one made, but with just the way things have been so hectic, I haven't listed it yet, and I haven't even touched the new items that I brought home, so time to get moving. Good afternoon, magical mavens. So this morning I popped into Rising Goddess and I picked up some herbs and some crystals, some that I have used before and just needed replacements for. Like I think my obsidian is like in a spell jar somewhere, so I needed to grab a new one of those. And then I'm also trying some herbs that I've never tried before, including mugwort. And I actually, when I was talking to Tina, the owner, she said that she smokes mugwort and it's very relaxing. And I remember that actually I have tried it. I actually got mugwort cigarettes from an artist on Instagram years ago, but I totally forgot about it. So trying it again. And the reason why I was inspired to do this is because I am in the Starlight Coven and we just had a workshop where we looked at our astrological charts and use that to kind of inform what herbs and crystals will work best for us. And a lot of the things that she mentioned for my chart were things that I already use all the time and didn't even really think about the correspondences, but there were a few things that I needed to check out and get into a little bit more. So that was fun. I will let you know what I end up doing with those things. Back home now, and I think it would be really nice to redecorate in here. So some of the fake flowers that I picked up today, I'm going to be making wreaths for the shop, but I'm also going to use some of them to kind of spruce up this area. This whole area was just a temporary setup for a summer scene that I needed to film, so I'm going to get rid of all of that and kind of just start fresh with some springy looking flowers there. And I think I'm just going to add a few more springy looking flowers over here, and I'm probably going to kind of phase out the eggs because those have been up since the spring equinox and we're about to be getting into Beltane season. And I think even though eggs totally can still represent that time of year, I kind of am just looking for a little bit of a shift. This area is like kind of just a mess. Like I pulled this off of the mantle when I was temporarily setting that up, and then this has just been sitting here since the winter season. And the thing with pine is that even though pine is year-round and we can kind of always decorate with pine, it definitely is giving me winter vibes that I'm not really feeling anymore. So let's just spruce up this whole area and just do something fresh. And the altar needs a complete and total refresh too. Not that, again, some of these things can't translate into the current season, but just because I'm ready for something fresh and new. And I'm no longer working with the altar in the same way that I had it set up for here. And now it's just become sort of a magical dumping ground for dried herbs that I plan on using for stuff. And I just want to give this whole area a refresh. And I'm working a little bit more with Persephone again, so I might actually do some kind of Persephone inspired altar situation for Beltane. And it is definitely also time to redo the tablescape. Again, it's not that it's like totally out of season, I'm just ready for something new. You know what I mean? I'm just ready for something new. So let's do it. I just wanted to kind of show you the view out my window, which isn't gonna look as lovely on camera as it does in person, but it is just covered in dandelions right now, and I love it when people don't cut their grass too much and we get to see that. There are different buds on every tree and they're all different colors. And then there's that gorgeous tree that they have across the street that has some white buds on it. It's just lovely. It's just lovely. But we need to have a real talk for a second here. Have you ever had those days where mentally you feel really creative, but physically you're just like not motivated? Or like maybe it's that you're emotionally motivated, but you're not mentally motivated, or vice versa. Like, I'm having a hard time putting my finger on it, but I have so many cool ideas that I want to try right now. And I just don't feel like I have the energy to do all of it. And I don't want to like force myself to do everything, because that doesn't really feel like it's in alignment with the whole like semi-slow living lifestyle thing that I have going here. Like, I don't call myself like a slow living person. I don't label my videos that way, because even though I agree with a lot of the slow living concepts, like even before it was trendy, I read this great book called Slow Time. It's actually a witchy book, and I think I discovered it through an article on this author's blog on Pinterest many years ago. It talks about how slow living is not necessarily about doing everything slowly, right? It's about really living seasonally, which is why I talk more about seasonal living as opposed to slow living. And being someone who does have a lot of quote unquote masculine zodiac energy, like my sun is Aquarius, which is an air sign. My moon is Aries, which is a fire sign. My rising sign is Gemini, which is a very energetic air sign. Like, I have a lot of that creative, getting stuff done, kind of like forward moving energy. But I also have to balance that out. And I personally balance it out in a sort of cyclical way. And part of that is to do with the fact that, you know, I'm a female, and we physically are cyclical. My cycle tends to match up with the moon as well. But I also pay attention to the seasonal cycles and how that affects my energy. And I think that's something that we don't always talk about. Even on my channel, I'm guilty of like talking a lot about what to focus your rituals and your journaling on, or how you can make your physical environment feel more magical, or how you can set boundaries and this and that. But I don't think I've really talked a ton about the like physical, and I guess it's somewhat emotional energy, and how it really does shift with the seasons. We've touched upon my friend Tanae Stewart's theory of personal seasons based on your astrology a little bit in some of the podcast episodes. And to be honest, I am still really getting into that, even though I've been focusing on the whole cyclical living thing for years. And I've even been aware of Tanae's method for at least a year now, I think. I'm still kind of like understanding what that means for me. So I am in my personal spring now. My personal seasons match up closely with the regular seasons, but slightly delayed. So for example, the natural start of, quote unquote, natural start of spring would be Aries season, because that's the beginning of the zodiac and when spring starts, when the astrological year starts. But my rising sign is in Gemini, which is a couple of signs after Aries, which means that my personal spring starts in Gemini season. So I'm like shifting into that now, but I'm technically, I think, still at the end of my personal winter. And what I've noticed is that in my personal winter, it's not that I'm not creative or productive, it's that first of all, I need a lot of rest and self-care time in between of tasks. And I also need to prioritize my tasks so that I'm getting done things that both are kind of closing the circle or closing the loop on things that maybe were left unfinished in the past year or in my past cycle, right? And then also things that are feeling inspiring towards what I'm going to want to create in my personal spring. It's almost like garden planning, but it's like with my life and my projects and stuff. So I'm at this phase right now where I think on a mental level, I know that my personal spring is just about to really get started and I'm going to have a lot more creative energy. But physically, I think I'm experiencing like a little bit of like burnout from, I have had a very busy winter. And even with the mindfulness of making sure that I do have a lot of self-care and give myself breaks for rest when I need to, I have been very busy. It has been a very challenging year, and there have been a lot of projects that I've needed to get done and a lot of figuring out to do, both like internally and externally. It's just been a lot going on, and it's all been good for the most part, even though a lot of it has been challenging. But maybe it's because it's both Mercury retrograde right now and eclipse season, among some other things that are going on. But I'm just like really feeling it, like not in a bad way, but just in a way where like I have so many great ideas and I feel so inspired, but I also really just want to sit on the couch and do not nothing. I actually am not someone who can really just do nothing for extended periods of time. I can't. And I allow that. I forgive myself for that because I think that's just how I am. And that's okay. But I am wanting to have more downtime and more like ideas, like just having the ideas instead of necessarily getting them all done at once. So that being said, I am having a little bit of a slower day than I thought I was going to today, and that is okay. And I'm also kind of scrolling on Pinterest to get some ideas for what I do want to do with this room. And I am getting some really good ideas, and I want to do them, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of space to just like relax a little bit before getting into them. Now, that being said, I just had a really cool idea for how to incorporate resorting out my library. I have for the past year or more had my library completely alphabetized, and I don't think I want to do that right now anymore. I don't really need my books to be alphabetized in order to find them. I have a small enough book collection that I know what every book looks like. So if I'm thinking of a book and I want to grab it, I can recognize it just by like looking. And what I actually want to do, especially if I continue to have this like curtain thing over that bookshelf, the bookshelf that isn't quite as pretty, what I might do is actually go back to a color coding system, and instead of just lining them all up in a rainbow like I did before, I might actually use that curtain to hide things that don't fit my decor and then bring to the forefront things that do. So I'm thinking about pulling out some like green books and just some springy colored books and actually like decorating the space with it, including like the mantle over there, which that's another thing. I want to paint that white before I even do any decorating, and I don't know if I have the physical energy for that right this moment. All right, so upon feeling into things, I am going to do everything that I just said I'm going to do, just not right now. Right now, I'm really feeling like I want to actually just sit down and do some kind of craft that I don't have to be like running around and moving around for. So I would love to, first of all, print out some vintage images that I can sort of change the energy of my gallery wall with. There are a few empty spots on there from things that I've moved and like not replaced. And then I also want to kind of just bring in some spring vibes. So I think I'm going to go through my library of vintage images that I have for my shop and just print out some rabbits, some birds, maybe even some botanical images. I think that would be really fun. And then this one is kind of going out on a limb for me because it's a long time since I've done something this spontaneous, but I think I'm gonna actually take some clay and craft some figurines. And I also want to create some fake topiaries for this room that kind of bring in the green vibes without it always having to just be the pine trees, because honestly, I think it might be time to say goodbye to the Sabbath trees. I have had them going continuously for probably 2 years now. I think I started it fall 2021, I think. I might not be right about that, but it's been going for a very long time, for well over a year. I've had to replace one of the trees, and then one of the newer trees that I have has now lost some of its lights. So there's like missing pieces, and I've been trying to fill it in, and I think I just might let it go. What do you guys think though? Would you still watch my channel if I didn't do the Sabbath trees? Kind of just kidding, but kind of not. But I think I'm gonna make some fake topiaries in here and bring in that green vibe, even though you can't really grow any plants in this part of the house. So, full disclosure here, friends, 90% of the things that I was just brainstorming in the last week of April still have not been touched, and it's currently the 1st of June. Not only did that sort of burnout, scattered energy feeling thing continue, but I also got the news about my family member who passed just when I was about to catch up on those kinds of decorating tasks, and everything besides gardening and keeping up with the most basic functions of my business ended up at a bit of a standstill. I was going to cut that whole little chat out of the video, but I decided to leave it in just to make what I feel is a relevant point. There's a bit of a delicate balance for those of us who both see the value in slowing down when we need to, and in speeding up when it's the right time and we have the right energy for it. This is something I haven't seen talked very much about on channels associated with slow living and seasonal decorating and cyclical living, and even seasonal living. Not to mention just content creators in general. Sometimes things happen on their own timeline and don't go according to plan, and that's okay. It's important to give ourselves grace and allow space to grow, expand, heal, and create at our own pace. YouTube is a beautiful platform that allows us to turn our lives into art. But one of the side effects of that is that it can very easily look like everyone except for you is on top of things and their life is just so beautiful and organized, but you would be surprised how much real stuff gets cut out of videos just to make it look kind of like everything came together perfectly or quickly or miraculously. And that isn't always the case in real life. So I just wanted to peel back the curtain a little bit and show you a little bit of the behind the scenes. So that being said, the entire living room decorating project has been postponed, most likely to be started very soon, but rather than shifting it from early spring vibes into late spring vibes like I was meaning to do, I'm instead just going to progress everything right over to early summer vibes for the next seasonal decorating video. But now let's sit down, get cozy, and craft some woodland creature figurines out of homemade clay. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I have just gotten really into my inner child there for a minute, because this was quite the arts and crafts project. I had no idea what I was doing. The back of that ear looks terrible. I need to fix that. And my biggest lesson here was that salt dough is not clay. I just had to learn that because I keep hearing salt dough is so amazing, make things out of it. And it's really just a sticky blob of madness. So I ended up having to sculpt my little rabbit figurine entirely out of foil, mostly recycled foil, because I typically rinse my foil off when I'm done with it and stash it just in case I need it for some kind of craft. And it definitely came in handy. Okay, so this looks crazy. I think I like the proportions of it, it's cute. But the texture is a mess, and I don't know if there's really much of anything I can do about that. So I think what I'm gonna do is bake this guy, and then once he's dry, I think I'm going to put some kind of texture over him afterwards. So wish me luck. Alright friends, good things are happening. So this combination, also found on Pinterest, is for a makeshift Sculpey. This is definitely much more where it's at. It's not sticky at all because it doesn't involve any flour. It's just cornstarch and baking soda. So this is a little bit too hot to work with still on the bottom, but this is promising. And in other good news, the rabbit looks like he is working out perfectly fine. I think he's almost done, but I'm gonna leave him in for just a little while longer. It's just not, the oven is just on 200. And I'm gonna call this a success, especially because the hot glue didn't like fall apart and then I come in here and find him in pieces. So learning some things. Alright guys, so I know the time lapse made that look really fast, but I had to watch this tutorial video like 10 times. It was like a short 1-minute video. And I don't know if this really looks the way it's supposed to, but we're gonna roll with it. Let's see how our rabbit's doing. Alright, it looks like we've got ourselves a rabbit, folks. Still quite hot, but there we go. That's fun. I think I'm gonna try and do this again using the other clay. So while this looks maybe not much like what I had pictured, I actually am really liking it. It has its own sort of little rustic character, and actually after it baked, the texture kind of smoothed out, so I don't really hate the texture as much anymore. The bottom looks terrible, but no one's gonna see that. I like this. I might actually try making another one. There's still some of the salt dough left, and hopefully it's a little bit drier now, so maybe it won't be as sticky, but I kind of like it. It's kind of giving me inner child vibes along with like just artsy vibes. It looks like someone made it, and that's what makes it special, so we're gonna roll with it. Also, there was no tutorial for this that I looked at. I literally just looked at a few different rabbit sculptures and winged this. So yeah, I like it. It's weird. Here's my collection of weird little animals. So I think I'm gonna paint these guys today, especially now that I know that the two different clay mixtures put together leaves this like slightly different weird color on it. So we'll see what that turns out like. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, everything I do, from simply cleaning house to doing elaborate decorating projects, is all a part of my personal art witch manifestation magic. Since creativity is my most natural form of expression, I tend to use these kinds of projects each as their own little spell for whatever I'm desiring most in my life at any given time. Since one of my biggest desires right now is a thriving home and garden, a lot of my art witch magic is taking the form of creative home upgrades. But I also mentioned that some of my projects are more so spells than others. What I meant by that is that while I try to make literally every moment of my day an intentional mindfulness practice, there are certain projects that have a more specific and focused intention in mind. This watering can painting is one of those things that's more of a spell than just a ritual. Specifically, it's a prosperity charm for my garden, and not just this year's garden. This watering can has been with me since I started my very first garden, which was the same year that I happened to have my first go around the wheel of the year. It holds special meaning for me as a sort of magical tool. Not only is it a vessel for the sacred water element, which I pour as I embody my Aquarius nature of nurturing the seeds of my ideal reality, but it also represents a time when I had access to a much larger piece of land to connect with and garden on Mother Earth. Since I'm longing to reconnect with Mother Earth in that more close-up and personal way, I'm reactivating the sacred tool by drawing symbols upon it which resonate with my intention. The Sun Tarot card is one that came up for me a lot when I was manifesting that land that I got to live on for a time. To me, it represents a moment of harmony with the elements, when the circumstances are perfectly aligned for one to experience growth, stability, and fulfillment. I've included not just the sun face itself, but also some blooming flowers that are significant to me. Sunflowers have a very special personal meaning for me related to stability, prosperity, and groundedness. Marigolds were some of the first seeds I planted and grew successfully in my garden journey overall. It grew happily for me in less than ideal substrate in containers that didn't have proper drainage on windowsills of some of my previous apartments, even ones that didn't necessarily get what I would perceive now as ideal lighting for plants. It was a flower that I had a strong magical connection to for several years, and I even saved seeds from year to year to replant the same heirloom marigolds I had had in my first garden. But for some reason, I have had very little luck growing them in my current space. Even when I got some brand new marigold seeds, I've still only gotten one to germinate, and I have no idea what I'm doing wrong. To be honest and vulnerable with you, I feel like it's kind of been a sign reflecting how I feel about my current living situation. While in many ways I have a lot to be grateful for, and this has been a huge upgrade from previous living conditions, there's just always been something about the energy here that just disagrees with me, and I can't seem to shake it no matter what I do. It's like I'm disconnected from the elements in a way that's vital to my ability to thrive as my true self. And much like the marigolds, I have the ability to push through to the light, but it seems like a challenge of unideal conditions that I can't even entirely explain in mundane terms. So I've included the central marigolds in my design, thriving and blossoming in the sun's rays, to represent both this favorite flower of mine and myself getting to bloom in earnest, free of the limitations that seemed to hold us back for the past few years. In addition to all that, this project also has yet another layer of meaning to me. You may not know this about me, but hand drawing and hand painting was the first form of art I used to express myself as a small child, and it continued to be so all the way through undergrad. I drew and painted on a semi-daily basis from age 2 through age 22. Yet most of the visual arts you see me doing and selling now are not my handmade drawings or paintings. In my career and my personal life, I mainly do graphic design using a lot of vintage public domain illustrations, journal crafting, home decor crafts, and videography. To be honest, I got a bad case of burnout when I was pursuing my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in art school, and after college ended, I tried to sell my illustrations with less than satisfactory results, so I turned to what I perceived as more practical skills like photography, graphic design, and the crafting of useful objects. I guess at some point the Muggle world got to me, and I began to believe that it wasn't practical to make time for the practice of fine art. And when I did lean into it, it often has taken the form of digital paintings, where I draw something by hand and then scan it onto the computer and use Photoshop to color it in and turn it into some kind of digital print or digital product, as opposed to just the good old-fashioned physical paint on an object without any help from technological tools. So in the spirit of saying goodbye to that version of me that feels too busy and too practical to indulge in drawing and painting, I chose to do this project entirely by hand with the old-fashioned mediums that I used to use before life seemed to get so complicated. This is a spell to embody the version of myself that has the energy, ability, and desire to paint for the sake of painting and to garden for the sake of gardening. Stepping into a new chapter of my life where I re-embrace the simple things that brought me joy and purpose as a child. We might as well unpack this shopping from the other day. I have a question, guys, and because it's me, I'm gonna do what my intuition is telling me anyway, but I would love to know what you would do. Would you cleanse crystals in sunlight on a Sabbath that is not astrologically significant? Because today is Beltane, and May 1st, and I have heard it said that the actual astronomical date of the cross between the solstice and the equinox is like a week from now at least. And I celebrate it today, and there's some sunlight on my porch. Well, what would you do? It's a waxing moon. It's not the eclipse yet. Not that I would be morally opposed to cleansing crystals on an eclipse. I think that'd be kind of cool. But I don't know, guys. I'm not really a crystal guy. How do you guys cleanse your crystals? I'm just going to put it out there in this made up holiday sunlight and trust that just putting it out in nature with that intention will be enough. But what would you do? Mugwort. I'm excited to try this for the first time. Tina, the owner of Rising Goddess, found these massive, and I mean massive, witch balls in the old cemetery in my city. And I was like, I gotta go for a walk in there. It's been a hot minute. She was giving these away for free at the cash out. And I'm also trying Damiana for the first time. Why do I keep saying that this is my first time trying mugwort? It's not. I tried mugwort cigarettes a few years ago and I just forgot about it for some reason. But yeah, I think I'm gonna mainly be using this for tea this time because that I have actually never tried. All right, friends, pausing for another quick real talk. So in the past month, since I filmed this footage, I have been really diving into plants in general, and I've also been diving into learning about foraging and things like that. And I've downloaded an app onto my phone that helps me to identify plants that I find in nature. And I have actually discovered mugwort growing not only in the nature-y parks in my area, but once I identified it there, I also came home and discovered that mugwort is also literally growing in the parking lot of my apartment building. And I had no idea that that was what it was. That being said, it looks nothing like this. And those of you guys who know what mugwort is have probably this whole time been like, that's not mugwort. Or Maybe there's multiple kinds of mugwort and one of them looks like this? But I'm a little bit confused here, so I don't know if I was given the wrong thing or if there's multiple different kinds of mugwort, but mugwort looks like a bunch of little like hands almost, but none of it is this like super thin spindly stuff that kind of looks like dill or fennel or whatever. So if you guys know about mugwort, please let me know in the comments. Was I accidentally given the wrong thing at Rising Goddess, or is there a type of mugwort that looks like this? Because now I am just totally freaking confused. Post-editing fury here, coming back to re-edit this video really quick before going ahead and posting it. So as it turns out, I was right. This was not mugwort, it was fennel. Apparently there had been a message in my Facebook inbox from a month ago, from the next day after going to Rising Goddess, apologizing and saying that she accidentally sold me fennel instead of mugwort. I really don't use my Facebook account, but like I said, since there has been a family situation going on lately, it just occurred to me literally right before I posted this to check my messages and see if there was anything important in there. But instead of re-editing the whole video, I'm just gonna leave this in here as a sort of show and tell of my process with herbalism. This is an important lesson for me, you know, and no shade to Rising Goddess whatsoever, but I keep hearing as I'm learning about herbalism that one of the best ways to become a better herbalist is never to just take any one person's advice at face value and to do your own research, which is exactly what I inadvertently ended up doing when I started identifying random plants in the forest last month and realizing that mugwort grows in my area and that wasn't it. So, you know, thankfully this wasn't like something dangerous or something that I was really counting on, but that's something to be aware of. If you're going to get into herbalism whatsoever, even if it's just as simple as trying a type of tea that someone has recommended for you, do your own research because you just never know. So in case you were wondering, this right here, which I foraged from a local nature park, is what mugwort actually looks like. And for the slightly more mundane purchases, I just paid a trip to the store to grab some florals for some wreaths that I'm going to be making. But while I was there, couldn't stop myself. Sorry guys, I just had to. I've never seen a witch ball this big. So this little one is the one that I got from the park that is kind of near to the cemetery. It's a park that's across the street from the cemetery, but apparently the ones inside the cemetery are much bigger. I don't know why, but I gotta go in there. Apparently the foragings from the cemetery have some extra magic. She said she's found lots of interesting things in there. For our next craft, we're going to be diving into my late spring seasonal tablescape. But first, let's take a magical little detour to the park to get some shots for my sister of her most recent masterpiece. If you haven't already experienced the phenomenon that is TK Fareed on Instagram and TikTok, you're going to want to check this out. My sister is an epoxy resin artist, and she's currently making these magical 3D art pieces, sometimes using preserved flowers from her clients' weddings and special events. For this photo shoot, she stole one of my dresses, paired it with her new corset that she just designed because she's suddenly becoming a sewing artist as well. And stay tuned because I'm going to steal my dress back as well as steal the corset for a really fun video that I have coming up on this channel. In the meantime though, I definitely invite you to follow my sister here on YouTube as well as on Instagram and or TikTok, and the links to that will be below. Greetings, magical mavens. So it's been a whole day doing a photo shoot with my sister for her art. And then also she's starting to sew, so she made that corset, so we got some shots of that, and we got some fun shots of me too that I will hopefully be using in some of my seasonal content. And now Matt and I are headed to Rising Goddess for a full moon ritual on this full moon Scorpio eclipse. Yeah, she's so cute. Hey, Trixie. So this was not my first time attending a ritual at Rising Goddess, but it was my first time attending a full moon ritual at Rising Goddess, and I guess they were doing something a little bit different this time. Instead of doing a formal ritual, we decided to kind of just sit around and talk about weird folk magic and superstitions from our families of origin, and there were some interesting connections between people of similar ancestry that had similar traditions, which was kind of fun. There was also a wonderful photo op that I sadly didn't get, where Trixie came up to me, jumped up on my lap, and I was all excited about it. But it turned out she was only jumping up onto my lap because it was an easy access point to get onto Matt's lap. I'm always a little bit insulted when a cat doesn't pick me as their favorite, but it's okay because I'm just grateful that I am with a man who has such good vibes that animals gravitate and flock towards him. While we were there, we actually ended up manifesting some free fresh flowers. Manifesting fresh flowers is kind of a whole thing for me that I don't have time to get into in this video, but I'm sure I will touch upon it at another time. But it was very synchronistic that I did end up manifesting a free flower.
Tonight, if you're expecting high magic for me, sorry, fooled ya. Not happening. And this one has nothing. I'm gonna have you guys pick a candle color. Do you want white, kind of lilac-y purple, or black? Because I don't know if any of you are familiar with the form of kind of folk magic divination. Use a black one, and you know what? We're gonna have just all three colors. All right, so we've got the 3 color candles because why not? The bay leaves are out. If you want to write some wishes and hold it in your hands, tap into the energy that we've raised just by being here and sharing laughs and sharing stories and sharing traditions. Make your wish, light it off one of the candles, drop it in the bottom. So I'm just gonna, you doing a bay leaf dance over there? How would a bay leaf dance? I got a few more Sharpies. Cool. Awesome.
So that should work.
Oh, yeah, I'm on the
My friend's grandmother, she was able to take a lot while she was in the hospital, make sure I had a couple days left.